Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. It's beautiful weather outside, so first of all, thank you for choosing to spend your time inside in a room with no windows, listening to my rambling for the next 45 minutes or so. So, who am I? I'm Thomas, also known as Streaming Toolsmith. I basically help gaming companies improve live viewership, and that's usually done by creating interactive experiences for viewers when they're watching your game. I got into this whole thing because I kind of got tired from just watching Twitch passively as a consumer. I'm one of the people who would rather just play the game myself instead of watching someone play it. But if a game is interesting enough to watch, meaning that it's interactive in some kind of way, that gets my interest going, and then that kind of gets me to watch something on Twitch. I saw that Twitch extensions were a thing like, I don't know, 5 years ago maybe, and I realized that no one was really using them to their full potential. Like almost no games had any worthwhile Twitch integrations, and no one was really jumping on it, so I figured I'll just start developing this kind of stuff myself and offer my services to game developers and publishers. So I've worked on a couple of projects. The most notable ones are League of Legends, Baldur's Gate 3, Disco Elysium, and Cult of the Lamb. So as most of you probably know, promoting your game these days especially is incredibly hard. There's tons of titles out there competing for attention, so you need to make sure that you stand out from the crowd to actually get people to try your game. So usually developers and publishers reach for sure things like social media ads, influencer campaigns, and so on. But gamers are becoming kind of resistant to this kind of marketing. People are developing some kind of ad blindness, let's say. And to reach them, you basically just need to go all out and provide a unique and engaging experience when they come into contact with your game. That also includes when it's being played live. So obviously you have a lot of streaming platforms, YouTube gaming, TikTok, but the main part of this talk is about Twitch because that's obviously also the biggest one. Live streaming has completely exploded over the last couple of years, so ignoring that is basically something you can't afford to do anymore. So let's talk about Twitch and why live viewership is so important to you as a game developer or a publisher. So investing in a streaming environment, not just Twitch, again, is really worthwhile because the return on investment you get from doing that is a lot higher than you would get from traditional social media. So Twitch has 140 million active users per month, so there's lots of potential to get tons of eyeballs on your game if you stand out from the crowd at least. Streaming platforms like Twitch are also much more effective at converting viewers to actual players compared to other social media platforms because of the things that you can offer in terms of experiences. So being able to engage with your game in an interactive way when it comes to a Twitch integration is a lot more engaging and is kind of the viewer's first real touch point with your game and kind of almost turns them into players, even if they haven't played the game themselves yet. So this talk specifically not only talks about Twitch, but more specifically Twitch integrations. So integrations are basically a way to improve live viewership by creating interactive experiences. So those interactions, again, are going to make your stream a lot more engaging to watch for your game, and it's going to make your game stick in the viewer's minds for a lot longer if they have like a cool experience that they get to think about often. So in this talk, we're going to talk about what Twitch integrations are, what they do, how they work both on a conceptual and a technical level, very high level overview because we only have 45 minutes. And we're also going to look at 2 case studies for Baldur's Gate 3 and Cult of the Lamb. So Twitch integrations come in 3 main forms. I'm sure most of you are aware what Twitch drops are. If you're not, it's basically just a way for you as a viewer to get rewards just from watching a specific game. So for example, you could watch for 4 hours and maybe get a cosmetic that you can then use in-game. Then you also have chat integrations, which to me, in my opinion, are kind of old school and outdated by now because of Twitch extensions. But chat integrations kind of paved the way for Twitch extensions. So the downside of chat integrations is that they're very limited in what they can do, seeing as it's text only, so you're only limited to maybe using it for voting or triggering certain events like that. But the other big downside is that you're also basically just spamming the chat with commands, which is something that streamers don't really like to see because they want to keep their chat discussing the game and talking about them because streamers are maybe a little bit narcissistic. And then finally, you have Twitch extensions. So they're kind of like the sequel to chat integrations. Twitch extensions offer you the ability to show viewers an actual interactive UI that they can play around with. And they allow you to offer a lot more in-depth and immersive experiences compared to chat integrations. So extensions are the primary focus of this talk. Chat integrations, I would say, still have their use cases every now and then, but if you can, I would suggest you always go for a Twitch extension instead, which again allows you to do cooler stuff that you just basically can't do with chat integrations. You can use chat integrations in certain cases still, but I would then suggest to tack that onto your Twitch extension. There are a couple of use cases for that, which we can get into later. So let's talk about what Twitch extensions are on a visual level, like what do they actually look like for viewers and streamers? Well, there are 4 different types of Twitch extensions. So the main one you're going to see, especially when it comes to game integrations, is an overlay extension. So that's taking up all of the space on the stream. That doesn't mean that you should take over all of the space on the stream, because then viewers won't get to see any of the stream itself and streamers will get upset. So basically just only use what you have to. The main benefit of overlay extensions is that they're enabled by default. So if a streamer installs it on their channel, any viewer who goes to the stream will automatically see that overlay extension, and it's going to enable by default, and then you can show a pop-up, a tutorial maybe for first-time viewers and so on. So there's no real discoverability issues because it's just right in their face almost. One of the example use cases for this is basically any kind of game integration where you have rich UI that you want to have viewers interact with. A good example of this is card games on Twitch, like Hearthstone, Legends of Runeterra, and so on. They have really cool Twitch integrations where you as a viewer just get to hover over any card you see in the game, and then that's going to pop out a tooltip showing you the exact details of that card. That might sound a little dumb, but just being able to offer that information at a glance to viewers is incredibly powerful and kind of gets their gears turning in terms of deck building and so on, even if they haven't even played the game themselves. Then the next type is a component extension. So that's activated by just clicking a small icon on the right of the stream when you hover over it, and then this little thing pops out. So that does have a little bit of a discoverability issue, I would say, because people aren't used to this pattern yet. Hopefully in the future, when extensions become more of a thing, they will be. But for now, I would just suggest using a overlay extension instead. One of the benefits of these component extensions is that they take up minimal screen real estate, and they can be combined with other overlay extensions. So overlay extensions, conceptually, there can only be one, much like the One Ring. So component extensions kind of add on to that. If you have another overlay extension that you're competing with, for example, then you can start using a component extension instead. Then finally, you have the panel extension when it comes to like these stream extensions. That is kind of special because that lives below the stream. So even when your game is not being played, or even when the stream is offline, it shows that extension. Again, this is a good use case for maybe if you have like an in-game tournament system, you can show the schedule there, maybe showing some stats, things like that. Or if you want to go really crazy, you could develop some kind of mini game that's related to your game in some kind of way. An idea I recently pitched, for example, would be some kind of Tamagotchi-style game where you basically just have to take care of a mascot that appears in the actual game. So you can go kind of crazy with that. The cool thing about this is that it's visible even when offline. So in the Tamagotchi use case, viewers would have to basically take care of the mascot 24/7, even when the game wasn't actively being played. And then finally, we have the mobile extension, which is kind of different from the others because this is only available on mobile. It's the only option. And again, much like component extensions, it needs to be activated manually by the user by just clicking a button on the UI. Again, a little bit of a discoverability issue because viewers aren't used that much to Twitch extensions yet. But I have noticed in the last couple of years that people who watch it on desktop really ask for a mobile extension, so probably worth adding that down the line if you're building a Twitch integration. I would suggest not focusing on this at the start because the vast majority is still going to use the desktop extension, so keep that in mind. So the benefits of a Twitch integration are kind of twofold. You can entice new players into trying your game. Like I mentioned earlier, with the Hearthstone example, people just look at what you're offering. They kind of see what cards the player is using, and then that kind of gets their gears turning. If they see a cool legendary card that they think would work well, then they can start thinking about that. And that way you get people to think about your game as a player, even if they don't actually own the game yet. And on the other side, existing players can be engaged in like a play, watch, play loop, let's call it. This can be done either through Twitch rewards, like Twitch drops, by having them watch the stream, then get cosmetics that they can use in-game. Or similarly, in the case of Hearthstone again, you have the information thing that's really useful for new players, like just seeing a single card. The extension also offers like a whole list of the deck build, and you can easily copy a deck code into your own game. That's something that's more interesting for existing players, where they see a cool deck that the streamer is using, and then they can just get up and running with that deck in-game in a matter of seconds by just copying the deck code. So there's different ways for viewers to interact with your integration, and they all serve different ways. So there's 3 main interaction models that exist within Twitch integrations. You have informational extensions, interactive ones, and then finally loyalty building. So for informational ones, they help you to provide a deeper view into your game systems, like I mentioned earlier, Hearthstone again, or in the case of Baldur's Gate 3, just looking at what kind of weapons the player is using, what spellbook they're using, and so on. It's also useful for exposing certain stats to players. So in the case of a first-person shooter, for example, you could show stuff like kill-death ratio, accuracy, headshot percentage, and stuff like that. People get a kick out of comparing themselves to a streamer they're watching. And it's also really useful for automating certain tasks that usually happen organically within a stream. Like for an RPG, for example, viewers would come in and then ask the streamer, hey, what quest are you on? How did you end up completing it? Things like that. What kind of weapon are you using? Again, and being able to just self-serve that information to them and having them look at that information on their own time without bothering the streamer is incredibly useful, both for the viewer because they get an answer right away, as well as for the streamer because they're not bothered by the same question 100 times per stream. Then, to me, the coolest forms of extensions are the interactive ones where you can actually have influence in the game in some kind of way. So manipulating the game in certain cool ways, like making an enemy boss spawn, healing the party, and so on. So being able to actually influence the game you're watching instead of just passively consuming it. One of the other most powerful features I've discovered so far to be is viewer cameos. So basically just a way for viewers to appear in-game in a certain type of way, maybe as an NPC, maybe it's their avatar on a painting on the wall or something like that. People really get a kick out of seeing themselves for some reason. And finally, you can also do stuff like crowdsourcing a playthrough where instead of just having the viewers follow along the story, they get to actually decide what happens while the streamer is playing. And finally, you have the loyalty building integrations. The biggest one by far is just Twitch drops itself. You can also do a lot of cool stuff if you build custom integrations. So if you're not familiar with Twitch drops, again, it's just watch X amount of hours, get Y reward. The problem with that is if you want to build something where it's kind of event-based, for example, if a streamer gets like 5 kills in a row without dying or something, certain viewers will get rewards. You cannot do stuff like that with Twitch drops, so then you're looking at a custom integration instead. So in my opinion, the best integrations out there kind of create stories. And by stories, I mean that they're unique and memorable moments that are created by the interaction between your integration, the game, the streamer, and the viewers. And they can cause a lasting impression on your viewers and kind of get to want them to try out the game for themselves. So let's take a look at 2 examples of these kinds of stories that I'm talking about. So the first example is a clip from Cult of the Lamb and its Twitch integration. Before I start the video, I'm going to give you some background information on the game for people who aren't familiar with it. So as the name suggests, in Cult of the Lamb, you basically manage a cult. You recruit followers who have their own personality, look and feel, and so on. I'll explain the actual Twitch features for Cult of the Lamb in detail in a second, but for now, all you need to know is that the followers in the clip are actually Twitch viewers who won a raffle, customized their follower, and are appearing in-game. So in this clip, one of the followers is starting to descend. And a descending follower in Cult of the Lamb is basically just going to start ranting to other followers because they no longer believe in the cause of the cult. Eventually, if you do not stop them from dissenting, they will end up leaving your cult and taking resources with them and so on. So it's important to take care of dissenting followers as a player. So let's take a look at how that interaction played out thanks to the Twitch integration.
Whoa. Turbo Scrub, come here, buddy. Turbo Scrub, what's your problem, dude? My faith is shaken. I can see through your lies. You're a fraud. Twitch chatter deciding your fate. What are you doing? Hey. Chat, what are you doing? Deciding my fate. He's got like full descent. He's gonna like run away. All followers have been cured thanks to Twitch chat. Aww. Hi, Turbo. Wait, you're not spouting a bunch of shit. Wait, did he get cured of his descent? Was being dissenting a disease? Oh, look, he likes me again. He loves me. You fixed him. Oh my God, that's amazing.
So in this next clip, we're going to be taking a look at the Baldur's Gate 3 Twitch integration. One of the features of that integration is that you can allow your viewers to vote on certain dialogue choices. That's going back to the crowdsourcing a playthrough I mentioned earlier. So Asmongold, one of the most popular on streamers on Twitch, figured it would be a good idea to let his viewers decide what to do in this particular case. So let's see how that worked out for him.
What do I say? Damn, you guys are out for blood. 85%? Holy shit, guys. Okay, all right. Let's do it.
10 seconds later.
What do you guys think we should do? You guys really want me to pop off? Tell me right now you want me to pop off and I'll pop off. All right, it, let's pop off. Y'all are stupid.
A few moments later.
God. Man. That sucks. Well, you guys got me killed. Yeah, that dude, you guys got me. You guys got me dead. That's everybody else's fault except for mine.
If you're familiar with Asmongold, this probably isn't a surprising outcome, but you know. So let's talk about a couple of principles that I try to stick to when creating any kind of integration. So they might not necessarily be the same principles that you try to stick to when you create your own, but these have served well for me in the past to create successful integrations. So the first one, the most important one to me personally, as a gamer and a viewer myself, is it shouldn't be a gimmick. So it shouldn't be something that's tacked on at the very end where it's very obvious to viewers and players that this is something that was just jammed in there like 1 week before release. So you don't really want to put any low effort stuff in there just because you heard you had to have a Twitch integration, maybe at a conference or something. The second most important point is that you should respect the spirit of your game. So you're making a game that you love. It's a labor of love. And an integration is kind of an extension, pardon the pun, of that. So it should treat the game with respect. A Twitch integration should still feel like it's part of the game itself, and it shouldn't upset the game balance too much. Generally, I would say that it's okay to make things harder thanks to a Twitch integration, but you definitely don't want to make things too easy for streamers, because that way you're going to alienate the majority of your player base who aren't actually streaming, and they're going to show up in a stream, see that the streamer is playing a game that's kind of vastly different to their own because it's made so much easier, and that's going to feel really shitty for them. Then to me, it's also important to match the game's UI to provide like a cohesive, immersive experience for viewers. Having a janky looking or very generic looking UI won't carry as much weight as a fully custom game UI extension would have. It kind of provides a seamless and smooth transition between the viewers just watching the game and then actually interacting with it within the extension. I'm kind of going to toot my own horn a little bit, but there's a valuable lesson in there as well. When we launched the Baldur's Gate 3 Twitch integration during early access, we didn't have a Twitch viewer tutorial yet, so they were just dumped in there right away, which caused them to not realize that the extension UI they were seeing was actually part of the Twitch stream and supposed to be used for them. They just thought that it was part of the game's UI, so they didn't even realize it was interactive. So lesson learned there, if you can, just provide like a quick tutorial when they first join the stream saying, hey, this is the Twitch integration, you can do this and this with these features. And then finally, you want to use existing game systems and mechanics as much as possible. So apart from a very few select use cases, it doesn't really make sense to create completely new game systems and mechanics specifically for a Twitch integration. First reason is that obviously that's going to take time and resources, which you probably don't have if you're close to launch. And secondly, it also doesn't make sense to kind of build this whole thing specifically for a streamer, because again, same issue with respecting the spirit of the game. People are going to come into the stream and see entirely like new systems and mechanics that they themselves cannot experience, and then they're going to feel left out. So let's talk about the technology behind Twitch integrations. So you have three major parts. You have the EBS, which is what Twitch refers to. It's basically just a fancy way of saying backend servers. Then you have the game integration itself, so game code that's actually running from within the game. And then you have the Twitch extension, which is what's shown to viewers and streamers. So an EBS, that's responsible for basically communicating with the game, and the extension, it's going to store game data, user votes, and all of that stuff. You can communicate with the EBS that you built over HTTP and or WebSockets. It kind of depends on your use case. That system should also be responsible for authenticating any requests that come in, because you obviously need to know what Twitch channel the game data that's coming in belongs to. Finally, you can listen to Twitch chat for select use cases if you want to do that. And you can basically just build that in a language of your choice, and you can host that anywhere. That's not hosted anywhere on Twitch, so you're free to do whatever you want, basically. Then for the game integration, that's basically what the game integration does, is it only communicates with the EBS, starting polls, sending game data, and so on, possibly reacting to events that's coming from the EBS in the case of someone subscribing or using channel points, and your integration reacts to that in some kind of way. It should also be the source of truth for game data like tooltips and things like that. In my experience, it's a bad idea to have like a central repository of game data that you can then pull things from. It's much easier to just send data from the game to that specific Twitch channel and then have it displayed in the extension that way. Using it that way also kind of gives you localization for free, because if the game is being played in, let's say, Spanish or something, then that's going to send over all game data like tooltips and so on in Spanish as well to the backend, and then you can display that within the extension. So that kind of gets you localization for free, in the sense that if a player is playing in Spanish, you can be pretty sure that the viewers will be speaking Spanish as well. Then a bonus tool that I built with any integration that I work on is basically an empty shell that I call the mock game. And it kind of replaces the actual game integration. So it's making the exact same API calls, receiving the same data that the game integration would be doing, but I can just build that at the start of the project. So that's basically a workflow thing so that I can get up and running and build the extension and the backend without having to pressure, let's say, the game developers into starting on the game integration right away. Then finally, you have the Twitch extension itself. Like I said, that's served on Twitch to all viewers and streamers in the case of configuration. That's kind of the interactive layer between viewers and the backend, and then the game itself. So that's built using web technologies, using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, what have you. One important thing to note is that when you build this, it's being hosted on Twitch. So you submit it to Twitch for review. They basically just go through your code, go through the extension features, make sure that it all works, make sure there's no funny business going on. So you do need to adhere to certain guidelines and policies that Twitch set out for these extensions. You can kind of look at it the same way as you would be submitting an app to the App Store on iOS or Android, for example. Then another bonus tool that I built is the extension debugger. So that's basically a way to run the extension without actually being on Twitch. The major benefit of that is that it's much easier for game developers in QA to basically just go in there and look at what's happening within the extension without having to actually stream on Twitch. So one of the benefits of that is that for Cult of the Lamb, I was working with Harrison, a developer from Massive Monster who lived in Australia. Australians apparently have really shitty internet, so he wasn't even able to stream, so that really helped him out to debug the extension without actually having to stream any meaningful data to Twitch. The last benefit of that is that it's also shareable using URLs, so it's very easy in this extension debugger to masquerade as a certain viewer on a specific channel if there's issues with like a specific game data setup for a specific channel, and then you can basically just share that URL via Slack, and people are looking at the same thing right away. So let's talk about Baldur's Gate 3. I'm assuming that I don't have to explain what kind of game Baldur's Gate 3 is, so let's proceed. For the Twitch integration, there are two main features. So the first main one is the party inspector. Again, like I mentioned earlier, this allows viewers to just look at the player setup, like party composition, spell book, inventory, stats, and so on. So that's really useful in the case of like players not knowing how to approach an encounter. Then viewers could go in, look at their inventory, see, oh yeah, hey, you have a healing potion, you have a trap, stuff like that, where they kind of get to collaborate just using the information that's presented to the viewer. So all of the UI you're seeing here, except for the background, obviously, that's all done within the extension. So I basically just got a dump of the art assets from Baldur's Gate 3 and then recreated the entire thing within the extension. That was quite the ordeal because, as you might imagine, Baldur's Gate 3 is a deeply complex RPG, so just getting the tooltips up and running with all of the data properly in there was quite a Herculean task. Then the other big feature is the dialogue voting, like I touched on earlier, like we saw in the Asmongold video. So that allows viewers to participate in the story instead of just watching it. Having something like this also makes games a lot more replayable, meaning that it's going to extend your Twitch life of your game. Because some streamers usually either just complete a playthrough, maybe have the audience decide on a couple of dialogue choices, and then afterwards, as a second playthrough or a third or a fourth, they might do like a full Twitch Plays playthrough where they have their audience decide everything for them from start to finish, which is also really fun and chaotic to watch. So these are the extension stats 1 month after release. So 20 million hours watched, 6 million unique extension viewers, almost up to 1 million by the end of the month, Twitch drops awarded, and then finally 30,000 plus channels actually installed and use the extension. Then let's talk about the Cult of the Lamb Twitch integration, which we saw earlier as well. So before we dive in, I'll just briefly touch on what kind of game Cult of the Lamb is for the people who haven't seen it before. It's basically a genre mashup of base building and colony sim, which is what we see here, and a roguelike dungeon crawler. So in Cult of the Lamb, you fluidly move between going into dungeons and getting resources and followers, and then going back to your base and using those resources to build out your camp and get cooler stuff. So the first feature of the Cult of the Lamb Twitch integration is the Twitch totem, where viewers get to collaboratively contribute to a specific goal. In this case, that's filling up the progress bar for the Twitch totem. That's done using channel points. If you're not familiar with channel points, it's basically a free loyalty currency, let's call it, that you earn on a per channel basis on Twitch. It's not tied to any real world money like bits are. You just basically get channel points for free, and you get to choose how to spend them by maybe highlighting your message or unlocking a specific emote or something. Or in the case of game integrations where you can make custom rewards, you can do things like this. So as that gauge fills up, when it's completely filled, the player can interact with the totem and then basically just spin the wheel, and they get a random reward, which could be resources, another follower to indoctrinate, which again plays into another feature, which we'll see in a second, or it could unlock specific skins tied to Twitch themes for the followers. Then the second feature is Help or Hinder, in which viewers get to dynamically alter the gameplay in really exciting ways. So the way this works is that first, this vote pops up where they get to decide if they actually want to help or hinder the streamer. Once that vote is concluded, they're presented with another 3 options that depend on what option was selected in the first phase, as well as where the player is in the game. So these options are dynamic based on whether you're in a dungeon, where if you're hindering them, you could, for example, vote to spawn bombs flying from the sky, or maybe having enemies deal double damage for the next room or so on. In the base, that could be where all beds break or all followers start to vomit or poop or something like that. And then finally, the most interesting feature of the Cult of the Lamb Twitch integration, by far the most successful ones, is the ability for viewers to appear in-game as followers. So when you indoctrinate a follower in-game, during the Twitch integration enabled mode, you basically just have a button saying start raffle. When you click that, it's going to pop up on the viewers where they basically just join the raffle, and one lucky winner will get to customize their follower in-game. So they get to customize their follower the exact same way that the player would in the case of like a single player game without a Twitch integration. So they get to select their animal form, their colors, and so on, allowing viewers to express their own identity. Once that's done, they actually show up in-game with their Twitch username above their head. And it's really fun to see just viewers interacting with each other over chat, talking about their followers and so on. One additional feature that's tied to the viewer followers is the ability to, again, use channel points for a different reward, where they get to communicate, let's say, with the streamer in a one-on-one fashion. They basically just use a channel points reward, add some text, and then that text is going to show up in-game. So their little follower is going to waddle over to the player, and then that's going to show whatever text they input, filtered for profanity, of course. This is a test video, so this was really a tame text, but you can imagine that there's some freaky stuff that's being said to streamers out there. So let's talk about the lessons learned for Cult of the Lamb. The first one is really important and is something that I try to strive for in any project since. The way Devolver approached the launch of Cult of the Lamb was that they had a early access period for a set amount of streamers. I think it was like 4 or 5 days or something, where they also heavily promoted the usage of the Twitch integration for those streamers. So basically, all streamers during that early access period were using the Twitch integration, which also caused other streamers who weren't part of that initial period to look at the streamers playing. They saw the Twitch integration being used. They saw it was very successful and fun. And being able to add that integration to their own channel, that's only a matter of like 2 clicks on Twitch. You basically just click the icon, then click add to channel, and then you're good to go. So thanks to that, all of the other streamers who were interested in playing Cult of the Lamb kind of already had their extension preloaded by the time the game actually came out for everyone. So to this day, I would say that around 90% or more of Twitch streamers actually use the integration thanks to that early trickle-down effect we had during the early access launch. Then second of all, we were suffering from success. So we basically had a game on our hands that was really popular just because of the game, because it's really fun and it's really fun, quirky art style makes it stand out, but also part of it was thanks to the Twitch integration. Because of that, we could never anticipate that the game would be so popular. We ran into some server issues that was caused by lots of traffic. In a sense, we kind of made it too easy to get up and running with the Twitch integration in-game, because it's just a matter of going to the menu, clicking connect to Twitch, then you're taken to Twitch, you click authorize, and from that moment on, your game is connected to Twitch, and it would start sending data. The problem was that all of the game instances that were connected to Twitch were sending data, even if their channel wasn't actually live and streaming. So everyone who bought the game on Steam and connected to Twitch, probably thinking they would get Twitch drops that way, were sending data to the servers, so everything was basically on fire. I was able to kind of fix that momentarily by implementing a backend fix, but ultimately we did have to update the game integration to actually fix it properly. But yeah, that was an interesting period with all-nighters trying to keep the lights on. And then finally, streamers really appreciate this kind of integration. Like I said earlier, extensions allow you to free up their chat again, so you're not spamming their chat. And if you have interactive experiences, like, for example, dialogue voting, it lets them experience the game together with their audience on a much deeper level, instead of them just playing and then chat reacting to whatever's happening. And again, it streamlines certain manual tasks that they love. Like, for example, customizing the follower within the extension of Cult of the Lamb. If there was no extension, and I actually saw this on a stream channel where they didn't have the extension installed, they would actually talk to viewers, like, what kind of animal do you want, what kind of animal form, what kind of color. So doing that times 50 or something, because there's a lot of followers in your cult, that takes a lot of time. Whereas if you have the integration, people just do that themselves, and the streamer can go about their day while they customize their follower. So let's take a look at a clip of a streamer reacting to the Cult of the Lamb Twitch integration.
It's the first game that I've seen that has done channel points, which
blew my mind a little bit. But honestly, as a streamer, it's the one thing I always want. Give me the extension. Don't do the in-chat stuff. Do it on their own screen. It's been great.
And finally, another lesson learned, like I said earlier, people love seeing themselves. I don't know if most people on Twitch are just narcissists, maybe some are, I don't know, but it's really fun for them to see themselves walking around in game, even if it's just a dumb little character with the name above their head, because that's going to cause them to be more engaged with the stream. In the case of Cult of the Lamb, people would stick around either if they already have a follower, they want to see their own little customized guy walking around, or if they don't have a follower yet, they want to stick around and enter the raffle and kind of like have the excitement of actually winning and appearing in game. So that also provides a platform for viewers to kind of discuss the game and their cameos amongst themselves. In Cult of the Lamb specifically, a character has certain traits, one of which is coprophiliac, which means that you like to eat poop. Yeah, Cult of the Lamb is a pretty interesting game. That if a viewer would, those traits are randomized, right? So if a viewer would get that trait, they would basically get piled on by other viewers and probably like get sacrificed right away because, yeah, eating poop is not very healthy. So let's talk about results. So the graphs we're going to see here, those are for Cult of the Lamb, as well as games in similar genres. So first I have a couple of tweets that people tweeted around release, saying they were interested in playing the game specifically because they were sacrificed, and just generally interested in the game and really loving the Twitch integration. So now I'm going to bore you with a couple of bar charts. So this is the max viewer count, first month of release for Cult of the Lamb and all other, well, not all other games, but other major games within the same genre or genres. So the red ones are Devolver-specific titles, and the other ones are just same genre. So as you can see, Cult of the Lamb pretty much dwarfed everything else. During the launch period, we hit a peak of 150,000 concurrent viewers on Twitch, which is just absolutely insane for a non-multiplayer indie game. Same thing with average viewers, just absolutely dwarfing everything else in the same genres. Some of these actually had Twitch integrations. Dead Cell specifically had one, and there's some others out there as well. Slay the Spire has I think, a Twitch integration, but that's community built. And then finally, a really interesting stat that's really underappreciated by a lot of people, in my opinion, is the amount of average channels that contributed to Cult of the Lamb's success on Twitch. So you would think that all of these previous numbers are because of like really big streamers of like 50K viewers or more streaming the game, and that did happen. But the majority of the success of Cult of the Lamb on Twitch is thanks to a lot of smaller channels, lots of VTubers as well, just trying out the game and really loving it. And to me, this is really interesting because that makes the integration features even more powerful, because you're also able to vote on followers to sacrifice and marry, kill, and so on. Those interactions become a lot more meaningful when you actually know the people in chat. When you have smaller channels, you have these really tight-knit communities where everybody just knows everybody. It's a lot more fun to click on a name to sacrifice if you've actually seen them in chat or spoken to them, compared to like a 50K big channel where you're basically just voting on random people. So the following couple of graphs are, again, viewership for the first month of release for a couple of games. That text is really hard to read. So this is for Enter the Gungeon. So a pattern you're going to see in the next couple of graphs is that when a game launches, it has this initial really high peak of the launch hype. Then you have maybe a week or so of kind of high viewership, and then it basically just drops down to almost zero. Same thing with Darkest Dungeon. You obviously have some peaks here and there. Maybe that's because of a big streamer picking it up. Same thing with Dead Cells. And then you have Cult of the Lamb. So obviously this trend looks a little different. Naturally, it's still going to die down. There's like nothing you can do to prevent your game viewership from dropping unless you're developing the next evergreen game on Twitch, like CSGO, Valorant, Dota 2, League of Legends, whatever. But in the vast majority of cases, you're going to have a significant drop in viewership as your game releases. But thanks to the Twitch integration, even if the viewers were seeing the same content, they would still be a lot more engaged with the game and the stream because of the way that they were able to interact with the game in meaningful ways. So again, some stats for the first week, or no, this was the first month as well. So 13K unique channels streamed Cult of the Lamb, 46.5 million unique viewers, 14.5 million unique interactors. Interactors meaning people who actually clicked something in the extension, excluding the tutorial pop-up. And then you have an average of 8 clicks per interactor, meaning that they clicked on things to like vote for help or hinder, or maybe to enter a raffle, customize their follower. In the first month, we had 430K followers created. By now, I think we're up to, I want to say 3 million or something, so absolutely insane. And then we had 29K channel totems with contributions, so people collectively using their channel points for the greater good to get the streamer more goodies. So really interesting stats to see, even for an indie game, only after a month, so that was hugely successful. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I think we have Q&A. If not, or if you don't have time to ask a question, you can just find me outside.
If there are any questions, please use the mic, or you can use mine. Okay.
Oh, sure. Hi, Thomas. Thank you for your presentation. It was like really great. And like, my question is, what is the difference/issues when you're starting integrations at the beginning of the project and maybe in the middle of the project?
Generally, I would say that, like, from my perspective, it doesn't make a lot of difference because I do this for a living, so I have a lot of tools to get up and running. If you were to do this yourself, it's probably best to start earlier rather than later, because you do need to familiarize yourself with like Twitch APIs, extension guidelines and policies and so on. I would say it's never too early to start with a Twitch integration unless you're still like in the very heavy pre-production ideation phase where game systems can radically change still, because like I mentioned earlier, you want to build on existing stuff. If that's still in flux, then it doesn't really make sense to start thinking about a Twitch integration just yet. You can start with integrations too late, I guess, like in my earlier example, if you only have a week and then you just slap something on there, that's low effort. I would say that's a bad idea too. The ideal moment to launch with a Twitch integration, obviously, is your launch of the game, whether that's early access or full release. You can add Twitch integration to your game down the line if you've already released the game, but I would suggest pairing that with like big content or DLC updates to kind of help them boost each other's popularity on Twitch specifically.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I'm wondering about the creative process of making Twitch integrations. Is it mostly you coming up with ideas, or is it a mix with you and the game developers? What is it like?
So my process is basically that I usually come up with, like, I want to say 90% of the features. Part of that is because Twitch extensions are still, even though they've been out for like 5 years now or something, they're still a relatively new thing because game developers haven't really thought about this stuff yet. So by the time I get involved, they usually haven't thought about like what features would work well for their games. So when I get involved, I usually just take the game for a playtest, and then obviously thanks to my experience with past projects, I know what features work well. So I basically just come up with the features, and then we have like a brainstorming session, and that's basically it.
I wanted to ask if you think that all the genres of the games would benefit from integration, like things like walking simulators. It would make sense to create a integration with Twitch for it?
I would say so, yeah. Obviously, like some genres lend themselves more to a Twitch integration than others, but you can do valuable stuff with basically any genre if you're creative enough, let's say. The only genre I would say does not work well for Twitch integrations is a very linear story-driven game where you basically don't even have any choice. You're just playing through the story. But usually people who are interested in playing that game aren't even going to watch that on Twitch. So for that genre specifically, I wouldn't bother building a Twitch integration. Any other genre, you can come up with pretty cool out-of-the-box stuff.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask one quick question, because on one of the graphs you've shown to us, there was this peak of viewership kind of delayed. Yeah, on that one.
This one?
No, the next one. Oh yeah, this one. So, like, the 0 point is the release of the game, and because usually the viewership is kind of starts with 0.
Yeah, so this early period was the early access. So this is for Cult of the Lamb. I don't know if I actually mentioned that, but this is the small bit you see at the start is the early access period where they had limited viewership because of like it wasn't out yet, but they did have that early streamer campaign, and then on launch it peaked, and then you basically just gradually slow down.
I was just wondering if it was this integration coming in or the initial release of the game.
I wish I could say that, but it started with the Twitch integration, so yeah.
Cool.
The original data the first week is already high, just the scale is up to 150,000 here. That's why comparing to other charts, it looks low at the beginning.
Yeah, that's true as well. But yeah, to me, the most interesting thing is like not the peaks, but more so the shape of the graph. Whereas these just drop off really quickly. And Cult of the Lamb, that probably, so this is again the first month of release, but we would probably still be hovering around the same thing. Even this year, we had a really high peak in January of around 35,000 viewers again, which was really high. That was part thanks to the Twitch integration update we did, but also obviously thanks to the new DLC they released in January, Sins of the Flesh, which if you're familiar with Cult of the Lamb is also known as the sex update, so that probably contributed to its success as well. I think we're done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your lecture. Big applause.